Tonight, a story of pain, resolve, and hope. A retired nurse who came close to death through COVID-19 and feared never seeing her family again. Michelle Barnett was in the ICU for 41 days, but she fought through and tonight shares her story to help others. Take this virus seriously and get the vaccine is her message. Health Minister Kim Wilson stated just last night that no one in the hospital is fully immunized, underscoring the benefits of inoculation. So far in April alone, deaths from COVID in Bermuda have run into double figures. Ms. Barnett urges Bermudians to think of others, get the jabs, and not put anyone else through the agony she suffered.
Tell us a little bit about your career and your life.
Okay. I have been a nurse, it seems like all my life, over 50 years. I retired a few years ago, but I still work, and I still was working at that time in a nursing home, and trying to take care of people like what I'm used to doing. And it was so stunning for me because we were working there, we were doing everything by the book. Everything. So it was just no way that I ever thought that I would contract COVID. And once I did, within a matter of a week, I had presented to emergency because I had gotten so sick so fast.
So did you contract it at, so you were actually working at a nursing home? Is that where you actually believe you contracted the virus?
Yes.
Okay.
And the thing is, you don't know because, people have lives. So the staff had to come and go. We had stopped taking, letting family members come. People were actually using FaceTime and all the methods to try and keep up with their relatives. But it was just basically staff that were coming and going. So we don't know to this day where or who, but we just know that it did happen, even though we did our best not to let it happen. Unfortunately, out of everybody that developed COVID, I got it the worst, and I ended up in the hospital.
Because this is at the beginning, really the beginning of the outbreak in Bermuda, because we're going back to March, April of last year.
Fortunately, not every patient contracted it, nor every staff member. It was kind of, I guess, half and half.
Right.
And very few patients, actually, only about 2 or 3 of them had to go to a hospital. Okay. And I think 2 staff members were admitted into a hospital. I mean, it was about 40 people who were involved. And out of the 40, only about 3 or 4 were admitted into hospital. The rest were nursed at the home and nursed back to health.
So describe your health condition before you contracted the virus. What do you think? Were there any pre-existing conditions that might have made you higher risk?
Yeah, yes, there were. I am a diabetic, type 2. I was actually only at that point. I was not dependent on any medication. I was diet controlled. I am overweight. I'm still working on that. And I also had, about 15 years ago, I had a very traumatic experience which compromised one of my lungs. So basically, I was kind of ripe for getting COVID and getting it as serious as I did. Mind you, I'm not a sickly person. So it's not like I don't get the flu normally. I don't catch cold easily. And I think that's because of my past where I've had to take care of myself. So for me, I didn't even think I would get COVID. That's how I was feeling. So when it did happen, I was totally shocked. They gave me a room up at the Hotel Southampton Princess for quarantine, and I had to leave my family and just go there for a couple of days before I was admitted.
So you were 71? 71 years old?
I was 70 then. Yeah.
70.
I went 71 last month.
So you're 70. And so how did the symptoms start hitting you? You knew you were exposed because of the environment you were working in, and then were you tested? I mean, tell us how the process went in the beginning.
Okay, when the health department realized that COVID was present at the nursing home, they tested every one of us. And I actually was not feeling unwell. I guess when they tested me and told me I was positive, that's when I started to feel unwell. But they tested me on the Monday. Results came back on the Tuesday that I was positive. I went into quarantine on the Wednesday, and between Wednesday and Friday, I started to feel very unwell. I could not breathe. Everything was heavy. I just felt I was spiking temperatures. So I called the doctor, and he said, if you take Tylenol, if you're still spiking, we're sending the ambulance. They said within an hour, and I was admitted into hospital that day on the Friday. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. That's how unwell I felt. And I could, as much as I tried to breathe, I could not expand my lungs. They were almost like they just couldn't move. So basically I was not getting the oxygen I needed. And I started to, feel very, very unwell. So they decided to admit me into hospital.
Did you have the classic cough and fever and other symptoms, or was it primarily just that feeling of not being able to breathe?
I didn't have a cough. That was amazing. I just had the inability to breathe, and I had the fevers. I kept spiking a fever. It would go down and come back up, it would go down and come back up. And I could feel it. I could feel it going down. I could feel it when it was coming back up. But I never had the cough. But it was the breathing that kept getting more and more labored. So I knew that I was in trouble then.
And so how long was it after you were diagnosed and started having these symptoms did you end up in the hospital?
Okay, I was diagnosed on the Tuesday, and on the Friday, I was admitted to the hospital. It was that quick for me. And by the Sunday, I was in an ICU. It was that quick. It was not even a whole week.
And when you were admitted, were there quite a few other people? I mean, what was the intensive care unit like at that point? Were you one of the first people that were admitted?
Actually, there were about 3 or 4 other people who had been admitted as well. But they actually had a few, and then they had other people who weren't COVID patients. So basically, they had set up that the intensive care, I guess the satellite unit over in PACU. That's where, they have the surgeries and stuff. So I actually was intubated over there, and then they took me over when they got a bed over on into the proper unit, then they took me there. But yeah, there were a few people before me who have been admitted.
So tell us, I mean, we have heard, obviously, we spoke to the chief of staff and members of the hospital, and they say that so much has been learned over the past year as to how to deal with COVID, because back then you were, again, one of the very first. And so people were learning. They didn't necessarily know what to do. And intubation, they thought was the way to go. But now they're trying to do less of it because, it can be quite dangerous and not have the best outcomes. Talk to us about that process. So you're in the intensive care, and they're telling you that they're going to have to intubate. Now, as a nurse, you knew what that meant.
Yes,
and just tell us how did that make you feel?
Well, the first thing when they said to me they were going to intubate me, I was very, very frightened. I know that I had been on the other side, and I had helped to walk people through illness and through their intubation and through all of that. Well, when it's you that is happening to, you just don't know. You just don't know what to think. My first thought was that I am not going to be in control of anything, any part of my life. Anything could happen to me. I won't have any say anymore as to what's going to happen to me. And a couple of my friends had to talk to me and had to convince me it's going to be okay, Michelle. You know what it is. You know what we have to do. We have to do this because you cannot breathe. You're straining all your organs. You really need to rest them. So I said, okay. I'll never forget when they put the needle in my arm to give me the anesthesia. I looked up. I felt like I was being submerged in a cold, dark body of water. I will never forget that feeling. It was just like it was a dark body of water, and then there was nothing. It was nothing. And there was nothing again for 41 days. I knew nothing. I didn't know anything. It's amazing. When I think about it, for 2 months almost, or 6 weeks, the world went on, and I knew nothing about it. And I had given my whole life over to other human beings. But I had a trust in them because, I'd worked with them. So I knew their capabilities. I knew what medicine could do. And I knew that if they told me that's what I needed, then basically that's what I needed. So once they intubated me, they actually intubated me through my mouth. They connected it through my mouth down to my throat. But I was chewing on the tubes. So then they had to do a trach. So they cut me here and put the tube through my trach into my lungs. And that's how I breathed for the next 41 days. During that time, I knew nothing. And when I did wake up, I had to be told everything that went on with me. And there was so much they had to do while I was under there, because my blood sugars, that I was so well controlled, I had controlled them so well. I was having to have 200 units of insulin during the day because the diabetes went totally out of whack. My kidneys stopped functioning because of this awful disease. And it seems like that's what COVID does. It goes from one organ to the other until it just overcomes you, overwhelms you. That they had to dialyze me for 3 weeks. And fortunately, my kidneys started working again. I had pneumonia, I had a COVID pneumonia. They had to keep changing the antibiotic because every time, it would work for a minute. And then when you look, I had to have something else because, I had so much mucus coming up. It was just a really, really tenuous time. Fortunately, I was out, so I didn't know any of this until I woke up. Then once my numbers and my results started coming back more normal, they decided to take me off the ventilator. So I just kept hearing somebody calling me, Michelle, Michelle. And finally, I looked around and I thought, I'm back. That was one of the lessons in my life. But once I came to, and I was trying, I sat up and I was functioning, I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I was so decompensated, everything, because I had been unable to move for so long. Nothing was working. None of my extremities were working. I wasn't able to walk. I wasn't able to do anything. I had to be fed. Because while I was on the vent, they were feeding me through my neck. I was having what they call TPN, where they, fed me through my neck. I had a catheter in because of all the, just everything had broken down. Everything had just stopped working. And so they had to do what they could to get it to work again. And all of this was caused through COVID, that COVID virus.
41 days on the ventilator, and you were on your stomach for most of that time.
Yes. Yes. They knew that from early. They knew that to nurse COVID patients on their stomachs as much as possible.
Do you know what medications they were giving you? Did they tell you, were they giving steroids at that point, or was that something that?
Yes, they were giving me, I think it's dexamethasone, which is a steroid. There were so many other medications I really can't, remember. I know that was one of the main ones that they gave me. And then, like I said, the insulin to keep my blood sugars regulated, and all the antibiotics. I must have had every antibiotic in the sun, gentamicin, vancomycin, because they just had to give me whatever they could so that, it would affect, because COVID is a virus. It's not really it's not really a bacteria, and antibiotics fight bacteria, but the virus caused bacteria in my lungs. So that was how, they had to treat it. But
during all that time, were you allowed to have any family members visit you? Your two beautiful daughters, I'm sure, were just completely beside themselves and worried. Were they able to come visit you at all, or were they, because of the rules, not able to even come into the hospital?
No, they weren't able to come at all. But the one thing that I appreciated was whenever they called, which was all the time, the nurses took time out to talk with them. The doctors took time out to talk with them and tried to keep them as comfortable with my treatment as possible. But they were beside themselves because we're very close. And I left so quickly. So I didn't have a chance to tell them anything. I didn't have a chance to even say goodbye if I was going to not come back, but my family, they got together and they talked and they prayed and they just trusted. They trusted the doctors. They trusted the science. They trusted that whatever they were doing with me, that I was going to be okay. And here I am today. Yeah.
So, I mean, all the stories that we hear, where people have to be alone and fight this virus alone, and that really the only people around them are the medical professionals. And, if you're lucky to have an iPad or an iPhone to see your relatives, I mean, that's just heart-wrenching, really, isn't it? That you feel very alone.
And the thing is, because I was out for a lot of the time, I wasn't able to really talk to anybody, but they did keep the radio on. My colleague, she has a gospel show, and she said, keep this radio on because I'm going to minister to her. And they kept the radio on. So I remember the music in my head the whole time that I was under. And then when I was able to talk, I was able to talk for a little bit. I did have my iPad, my iPhone, and they allowed my family to call me and talk with me and just be a part of my recovery. But for almost 2 months, I didn't see my family. I didn't see my children. I didn't see my grandkids. That's, I think, the most heartbreaking part, because there's nothing you can do about it, and you don't know the outcome. So you don't even know if you're ever going to see them again. And that is terrible. It's terrible. I thought if I didn't survive, I would have never saw my daughters, my girls again. And they would never have seen me again. So we didn't get a chance to even say goodbye properly, So I just need people to know that this is not a joke. It's not a joke. And I probably was spared to come and tell people that, because I've thought about it for a long time, and I thought the more I read the blogs, and I look on Facebook and I see all this negativity, and I keep thinking, they don't know. They don't realize just how serious this can be. You don't have to get it the way I got it, but you might. Your relative might. Your mother might. Your father might. And you would have to go through basically what my kids went through. And we know how devastating it could be. So I just hope somebody hears me and somebody listens, because it is not a joke. And I tell you this, I've had vaccine because I spoke with my doctor. I checked the science. I read the medical journals. I read everything. And my doctor looked at me. He said, Michelle, you would never want to go down this road again. He said, you need all the protection you can get. Mm-hmm. And I also had antibodies. So it's not like I didn't have antibodies, but like the science says, you don't know how long that you're going to have them, and you don't know how degraded they're going to become. But at least if you take the vaccine, it helps to boost what you have. And I took it, and I'm so glad I took it. And I feel freer. I feel like I have life again. And I would advise anyone who's on the fence to think about it. Talk to your doctor, read the journals, read the reputable journals, not TikTok. Somebody keeps sending me stuff from TikTok. I can't.
I know. I mean, there are so many people out there that, unfortunately, as you said, there's so much misinformation out there, and people saying it's a fake virus, or that, all these ridiculous conspiracy theories. But you are a living example of, the scariest side of this virus. And as you described, how quickly things can go downhill, and you could just be taken away from your family, put in an intensive care unit by yourself, and not know if you're going to make it out. And as a nurse, what is the survival rate of people that are put on a ventilator under your situation, under your conditions?
The survival rate is not very good. It's not very good. Now, in my instance, it was during that time, there were 11 of us who actually went on a vent during that period, and 2 of us survived. Just 2 of us. 9 died, and 2 of us survived. And now, when I look at the rate that's happening now, we've got more than 9 people who died in this last 2 months. So you have to know, once you're on a ventilator, you are really, really critically ill. The ventilator is the thing they save for last. You're critically ill. And if you can prevent getting to that point, then you need to do everything you can to prevent it. It's not even, I don't even know how to explain it any further. The ventilator is not the best place for anybody to be. Imagine not being able to breathe on your own for 40 days, 41 days. Something, a mechanical instrument is breathing, is pushing your lungs in and pushing them back out again. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. So I just hope that people realize that even though you may not get it the way I got it, you never know if someone else who you love, someone in your family or who you love, will get it and get it the way I got it.
It's just such a strong message. And again, you're so courageous for telling this story, because it's just, in me listening to it, it's just so scary. And, you're very brave for telling this and going through something that, again, I can't even imagine how you and your family felt. Just absolutely unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, as you said, that 2 people, actually 9 people died in the intensive care unit just around the same time. Mm-hmm. And only 2 survivors, and you were one of those 2 survivors.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Absolutely. Really. So you have a higher purpose right now. Obviously, there's I think as we were discussing before, you feel that, again, that you perhaps have a purpose now, to get the message out, because, again, there's just no way to get through to certain people who just won't listen. And so if they don't listen to your story and understand from a survivor who's been through so much, then what will they believe? Can you tell us now, again, it has not been an easy year for you. I mean, you have, ever since going through what you went through and being on that ventilator for 41 days and miraculously waking up and being okay. Just tell us what your journey has been since then, to get better, and where you are now health-wise. And also, did you have long COVID is another question.
Okay. Basically, I'll answer the long COVID one first. I didn't think that I had any symptoms because I felt like I was okay. But I realize now from walking, I walk every day. And I realize that whenever I try to walk up a hill, I get breathless. And I think that when I look at it and I read about it, that's one of the symptoms of long haulers. They get breathless. I never got breathless, even when I was much more overweight than this. I never got that type of breathlessness. But that's one of the symptoms that I have. Fortunately, when it comes to like brain fog and all of that, I really don't see anything different. I already got foggy brains. But I don't see any difference in that. But I think it's just the breathlessness that I had. Other than that, I had to look at my life. And I had to, as I felt myself getting better and better, I decided that I would take my life back. And I decided that I was going to change my diet. I was going to eat all those crazy things that diabetics like to eat, like candy and chocolates and stuff like that. I changed my diet. And I exercise every day. I don't give into it. At first, I wanted to because it was so hard to get up and start walking, and not to feel sorry for myself, because I did feel sorry for myself for quite a while, and for a while I was all over the place as far as my mental health. But I've come back to myself, and I've decided that I'm here. I'm here for a purpose, and so I'm going to live my best life. So now that I have decided to take my life back over, I am living my best life. I'm exercising and walking. I don't have a whole lot of aches and pains. I don't have a lot of fears. I wake up every day. I thank God that He gave me another day, and I get out there and see what I can do to make somebody else's day that little bit better. I just have lived. I've just learned to live. I don't take on a whole lot of negative stuff. I tell my story if I feel that a person will listen to me, because people need to know. Even my friends, some of my friends, they were very vaccine wary, and I told them, you need to not start looking at the things that the proper documentation. You need to look at the proper studies. You need to look at people who have studied this stuff, not people who can get on the internet and say, okay, I'm this, that, and the other. You have to look at the science. And if you don't understand it, take it to somebody who does. And that way you'll be able to live. But I'm happy that I'm here. I'm happy that I'm alive. I appreciate my family, my friends. I appreciate my life.
Well, yeah. We're certainly glad that you're here, and my goodness, as I said, it's just nobody can imagine what you've been through. But again, tell us. So once you came off the ventilator, you had to relearn things. Your body during that period of time. Again, I'm not really sure about the science, but your body has to relearn how to walk. And I mean, just tell us what did you go through to get better? Immediately after.
Well, I'll tell you this. Thank God that people have have a good heart, because I gave the physios and the therapists a real hard time because I didn't want to move. I wanted to move, but I didn't want to put the effort in. And they had to put me on a board. They have a board in ICU where they stand you up in order for you to start being able to bear your weight, to carry your weight again. And I hated the board. So when they came, I was kind of rude to them, but they paid me no mind and said, "Come on, Miss Barnett, come on, Miss Barnett." And then the nurse says, "You know, you have to come back here to work, so you better just do what you're supposed to do." And I thank them every day because they kept coming back and they kept pushing me that little bit more, that little bit more. The first time I tried to feed myself, I dumped the whole tray on me because I was so weak. So they fed me. They let me eat a little bit and they fed me. It was little increments, little steps that I had to take. I had to learn to walk. I had to learn I had very serious tremors. They had the neurologist come and have a look at me and she prescribed B vitamins, all the B vitamins, because I was trembling so much. I couldn't hold a cup or glass or anything properly. So once I was put on those vitamins, that helped to lessen the tremors, and I'm basically okay now. When I started walking, and I finally was able to walk, they took me out of ICU and put me on a regular ward. So then they used to come. I have to tell you this joke. They used to come every day to get me to walk, and I would look at them and say, "Not yet." And then finally, I said, I gotta get my bath. Do you know they stood outside my door waiting for me to finish my bath? I said, "You people are not going away, are you?" They said, "No, Miss Barnett." So I had to take my walker and walk up and down the ward. Then they saw that I was getting a little bit stronger, so they gave me a cane, and I walked out. I actually left the hospital with a cane, and within 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was walking on my own. But it took a long time. It took months for me to be able to start walking on my own again. I was so weak, and like I said, everything. I have skinny legs, but my muscles in my legs were gone, so I didn't know they could get anything up. Well, once I looked at them, I started crying because I looked so emaciated. That was that term my friend used. She said, "Michelle, you look so much better now. You were so emaciated when you came from the hospital." I lost 20 pounds in 6 weeks.
So it's been a full year, and you're saying that you don't have any. You do hear studies that sometimes there's long-term damage.
They had a little bit of concern about my kidneys because of what happened before, but they're functioning okay. As far as my lungs, they're clear. I was like, "They are?" He said, because for 2 months after I came out of hospital, I was having to take cough mixture because I was coughing up all this mucus. And after I started drinking lemon and water mornings and walking, that there helps to just inflate your lungs and get you going. And now I don't have that problem. So when I went to him about 2 weeks ago, and he said, he did my check, and he said, "Your lungs are clear." I said, "They are?" He says, "Yes, they are." So my lungs are clear. The only problem that I really, really feel physically, I have a tightness in my leg. It's almost like a neuropathy, but it's not really a neuropathy because I still have pulses, in my feet. But it feels like somebody put a tight stocking on it, and but other than that, I don't have any other problems.
I'm sure you have conversations with the doctors and the nurses, that obviously were involved in your care, and they must just look at you like this is a miraculous situation because of where you were and where you are now. This is not a normal outcome.
No, it isn't. I went to, before the lockdown, when I first came out, a couple of months after I came out of hospital, I went back to say hi to everybody in ICU. And when they turned around and saw me, they even started taking pictures of me because they couldn't believe. They could not believe. I said, "I know you guys. I know. Thank you so much." They, the doctors, they even called one of the anesthetists from somewhere else to come over and see me because they could not believe where I had been and where I come from and where I was that day. So yeah, they tell me all the time when I go to go to say hi or whatever. They look at me and shake their head, and a couple of them have even, a couple of my friends there have said, Miss Barnett, I'm taking the vaccine because of you. I'm taking it because of you. Because if you could go through all this and come out on the other side, okay, yeah, you've been there. So and the thing is, when I was in hospital, apparently they tell me that everybody, because I worked at the hospital for the last 15 years nonstop, they kept telling me that my former staff and my colleagues, they were trying to get into ICU to see me, and they were like coming to the door, is she okay? Is she okay? Tell it so and so, tell it so and so, because they just wanted me to know that they were all pulling for me. They were all praying for me. And it was like, even though I was unable to do for myself, I just felt like everybody in that hospital was pulling for me. I said, and God answers prayer.
What do you want to say out there to these, individuals who are just saying, I don't need the vaccine. I don't want the vaccine. This virus is not a serious situation. Just what would be your final message to the people out there who are still hesitant and might not believe how serious this virus really is?
The one thing I would hope that will come across to everyone is that this virus is not a joke. It's not a joke. And we don't have a lot of things that we could do, but there are things that we could do that will help to minimize the effects of it. And if you love anybody else but yourself, then you will consider the fact that you may not get the virus in any type of dreadful way, but you never know. The person that you love might just get that virus in the way I got it, and they may not survive. You have to live with that. Right. You're not getting the vaccine just for yourself. You're getting it to protect those around you who you love, and that's my message to Bermuda.
For those struggling with the aftermath of COVID, help is available. Contact your GP and/or call the COVID helpline on 444-2498 or the Emotional Wellbeing Hotline on 543-1111. I'm Diane Brewer. Thank you for joining us tonight.